All right, so just a little bit about me. Thank you for that introduction. I consider myself a Charlotte transplant, but I call myself an OG transplant because I've been out here since 2006. So I'm one of the original transplants, and it's a markedly different location when I first came out here than it is now. So I love Charlotte. I am the chief experience officer of Fusion Creative. I also own Fusion Photography, which is a traditional photography studio that's been in Charlotte now since 2000 and I came out here in 2006. I left the corporate world to pursue my entrepreneurial passion in 2008. And then I kind of founded this company after a few tweaks and some lessons learned in 2010. And so I work with specialized entrepreneurs and small business leaders on holistic branding, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But it's sort of start to finish from the entire journey of setting your business up and developing a brand message around it, and then learning how to amplify that message and connect with the right audience. And one of the things that I do is crafting these elevator pitches, because elevator pitches for me are it's branding in a nutshell. So it's your opportunity to be able to introduce yourself to people in a proper capacity and share with impact what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. And so one of the things that I first kind of got drawn into in this, and this is a workshop, by the way, that I've kind of revised for this particular audience. But this is a workshop that I give to corporations and individuals on a regular basis. And I got into this space, A, because it's directly related to what you do as a branding expert or branding your company. But I had a couple of funny stories that happened to me. Again, I've worked in this capacity for many years now, and I'm always blown away by the traditional networking sessions that I have attended and people's inability to sort of share exactly what they do and why they do it and how they do it and what their value proposition is. And I've seen literally everything in that space, from corporate executives to senior level people to new entrepreneurs who just didn't really quite know how to share their brand message. And so that's why I developed this workshop. I've been doing it now for a few years. I try to keep it interactive. So if you don't already have one in front of you, I'd encourage you to get a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, because you will be doing some writing. There's a couple of core elements that are part of a elevator pitch, and we're going to sort of draw those out. And I think we have a good enough group that we might even actually go into some breakout rooms if I don't talk too much, which I do have a tendency to do. So all right. So that being said, I do have some slides. I'm not a big fan of throwing slides up because I find sometimes it's distracting, but from time to time, I will put some slides up for you just so you can sort of see what I'm talking about. But just real quickly, in the chat room, if you can, if you had to encapsulate what your impression of a elevator pitch is, if you could in the chat room, just write down in a few words. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out. Just sort of what is the elevator pitch to you? Just curious what people's impression of what this is, because I often find that people's feedback on it is not exactly in alignment with what I think it is, and so I just want to sort of see where everyone stands on that. We have 11-second elevator pitch. That's right, Marie. Value statement. You're absolutely right. Your 60-second commercial. Fantastic. Good feedback, Tarika. Getting people hooked. That's absolutely right. It is your hook. Great. That's great. There's some really good feedback on there. Let me tell you what it is not. I actually had, this is a true story and it's very timely. I went to an event. I was in Florida last week, working with a client, and they had a session that was sort of offline, and it was for NASCAR. And it was a small private event, and they asked me to attend with them. And so I went out there, and there was a lot of people there that were from all over the country. And one of the things that happened at the event, this is a true story, like literally the timeliness say to is impeccable. But I got thrown up on, and it was from somebody who had been drinking too much alcohol at the networking session. And so one thing I just want to encourage everybody, 30-second elevator pitch is not not excusing yourself with bile during a session, and just sort of, you kind of know what the direction that is. But what it is, in my words, it's an opportunity to connect with someone emotionally. And those are two things that I really want to draw. I'm actually going to pull this slide up because I think this is important to see. So when you are in any sort of capacity where you're having the opportunity to share your message about who you are and what you do and all the different things about your brand, it's really important that you connect with people on an emotional level. And that goes for everything. That goes for your website language, that goes for your social media. It goes for anytime you're interacting with people, especially new people in a networking capacity, you want to be able to connect with them emotionally. And it's your 30-second elevator pitch to give yourself an opportunity to introduce who you are, what you do, and most importantly, the unique value you offer. And so I want to pause on that last sentence in this first slide. Think about when you meet people. Think about everyone you've ever met, whether it be close friends, whether it be a romantic partner, whether it be people at the networking sessions for Charlotte is Creative. Think about the people that have made a difference or an impression upon you. And think about what was it in that space, if you were to reflect on it for a minute, somebody you met that had a really strong impression on you. And it's different in every situation. It might be the way they smelled, it might be the way they smiled, it might be something they said, it might be the way they shook your hand. There's always something in that introduction when you meet someone for the first time, and sometimes there isn't, but when the people that really connect with you, there's something that you always draw yourself to, and that's an emotional connection. And so when you're crafting this elevator pitch, and I'm going to teach you how to do it in a few slides, you want to think about how can you share something about yourself that is concise, that is clear, and is designed to spark an interest, an emotional connection with somebody. And I also want to really encourage everyone to think about this. Your your elevator pitch is not just reserved for networking events or for your website. I can't tell you how many times I have met people in just random conversations at the checkout store at a grocery line or at a restaurant or at a ball game. I met somebody at a Charlotte FC soccer match last year that ended up being a massive client for me. And he was sitting next to me. He sat down next to me. We just struck up a conversation. I connected with him. I was genuine. I was authentic about it. And it just turned out into this like interesting. We didn't even watch the soccer match. We were literally like talking business the entire time. But what that translated into, and my interpretation of that for you, is that you're a walking billboard in every situation. And so you want to be really, really familiar about the core elements of yourself, what you bring to the table, the value that you offer, and something that's very distinctive about you that is different from everyone else that's going to stand out in whomever's eyes that you're introducing yourself to. So, all right, so we're going to get into a couple of things. Paper and pen, I want to talk about, and you're all going to do this in a minute. So, if you could think about your introduction outside of who you are and your name, I want you to think about the following categories. I just want you to write them down. So, every pitch you ever put together, whether it's a verbal pitch or a written pitch or an email pitch or something, should have the following qualities in them. They should have your introduction. And this introduction is always your name, right? You introduce who you are, your professional identity or your role. So, like, I'm CEO, and I have just to so you give you an example, I call myself the CEO, but I call it a chief experience officer. And that's kind of like, it's kind of funny, but it's sort of conversational. And people, I can't tell you how many times people catch on to that and they'll ask me about it. And so that for me is sort of a hook for me. By the way, it's a small hook, it's an underlying hook, it's what's called a subconscious hook. And when I explain what that is to them, it's exactly what I do in my business. I create experiences for my clients. We don't just do photography. We don't just do cinematography. We don't just do branding. We create experiences that resonate for our clients so that they in turn can do the same thing for theirs. And so just from the get-go in my pitch, my introduction always starts with my name. And again, I added a little bit of alliteration to my title, which is CEO, Chief Experience Officer. The second piece, which is probably the most important aspect of your value of your elevator pitch, is your value proposition. And this value proposition is critical in every element of not only your pitch but your business. And it's a very clear statement that describes the benefit of who you are. How do you solve your customers' needs? And what distinguishes you from the competition? What makes you unique to them? Again, think of yourself in a crowded room right now, right? You show up at Charlotte networking session. Well, there's a couple of people say too that want to be admitted. So we'll let them in. So you show up at a session, right? It's filled with people just like you and me. And there's probably a good bet that there's several of the same type of people doing the exact same thing. So your value proposition in every situation enables you to stand out from who everyone else just like you is, right? So for me, I have several value propositions, but I'm not going to go into those just yet. And so I want all of you just critically right now to think about, if you may, just for a second, spend about 60 seconds, and I want you to put in the chat room, you can just write it down and then write it down on a piece of paper, what you currently think is your value proposition. What makes you different from everyone else? What is the one thing that you do? And so your value proposition, just for the namesake of this exercise, I want you to think about your value proposition in terms of your professional acumen, what it is that you do for a profession, whether you're an artist, a photographer, a brand consultant, a painter, an engineer, whatever that is, write down what you think is your most valuable asset, whatever you think that is, and just drop it in the chat room. And I do also want you to write it down on the board. I'm not seeing anybody writing it down. Are you still thinking about it? Problem solver. Thank you, Maria. All right, so my time is limited here, so I'm not going to go too long. I'm going to continue on with this exercise. So I want you to write down, and I do encourage you to do this because a lot of what we're going to do today is going to be exercise based so that we can actually formulate, and you're going to be put into breakout rooms if I have some time to do that. Just depends upon how far along we get through. But your value proposition, again, I want you to write down, it's a clear statement that describes the benefit of your offer, how you solve your customers' needs, and what distinguishes you from your competition. Okay. So think of it in that terms. And we're going to formally write one in a second. So again, back to what every elevator pitch should contain: an introduction, a value proposition, and the differentiating factor that makes you unique, which is also part of your value proposition. And then if you have the opportunity, some sort of a call to action, right? And a call to action is an invitation for whomever you're engaging with, whether it's the reader, whether it's the listener, to take the next step, right? So for example, if I'm drafting an email to somebody, and your elevator pitch is not just reserved for physical meetings, these are also for emails, these are also for email funnels, these might be for something you're putting on your social media. You always want to give the reader or the listener an invitation to take the next step. And as benign and as simple as that might seem to you, people need to be invited to do something, because a lot of times, like, oh, I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to comment on this post. I'm not really sure if I'm supposed to do something with this. So in every situation, whether you're responding to a client inquiry or you're putting a social media post out there, challenge the listener to respond to something. Give them an invitation to, whether you can ask them a question, comment below. I'd love to schedule a meeting with you. Does tomorrow at noon work? Always leave a call to action in every situation. And if you're in a physical setting, you always want to just leave some sort of call to action. If you're about to walk away, turn around, shake their hand, and just something as simple as, I'd love to catch coffee with you next week. I don't know if your calendar in front of you, but I would love to connect with you next week and further talk about yada, yada, yada. Does that make sense? So again, in your paper right now, I want you to write down the number one thing that's your value proposition, and then we're going to sketch that out a little bit more. And just so you sort of have a high level of what we're going to do in this workshop today, I'm going to sort of give you a high level overview of what elevator pitches are and how to craft them and sort of the different formats and context of them. And then we're actually going to create our own. So, and also, if you don't mind, there's just some feedback. So if everybody could mute their phones, that would be really helpful. Okay, so continuing on, and I'm going to pull this deck up for a second because I think this is important for you to see. Give me 1 second. Oh, there's another person just joined. All right. So on this particular slide, I have some items that I really want you to consider for, if I can just move this over. Sorry, let me move this down. All right, so every element of your elevator pitch, these are three items that I want you to consider in every situation. Use vivid language. Whether you're talking, whether you're writing, whether you're using a post, use vivid language. And what do I mean by vivid language? Vivid language is descriptive sensory words. Remember at the outset, we talked about emotionally connecting with people. So you don't want to just say, you just want to just casually drop your name and say, hey, I'm Deevo. I do some branding, I do some marketing. You want to use words that really sort of invite the listener, whoever that listener is, to really take interest in what you have to say. So for example, I use what are called the rule of threes in mind when I use visual language. I help businesses captivate, connect, and convert. So those are three words that are like they're buzzwords that are part of my business. But when people hear those things, this is called the rule of three, by the way, if you've never heard of it. You want to use words that sort of follow in line, that are alliterative, that match each other, that sort of tell something else behind them, so that when you're in that conversation with them, there's something else to talk about. So for me, it's always about using really vivid language, and that doesn't mean you need to complicate the language. There's a difference between overriding and being crazy wordsmith guy versus using vivid sensory words that connect with somebody on an emotional level. And then the next piece of it is it should always be sort of anecdotal and brief. And I always like to use the word brevity around everything I do, because you don't want to sort of bore and lull the person to sleep. You want to just give them an opportunity to also introduce themselves. And then the third piece of this is, which is sort of outside of what you'll hear from a lot of different textbooks on this, is develop the skill of listening. It's really important that when you're writing, engaging, speaking to, talking with, that you're a better listener than you are a talker. If you're just there for yourself to introduce yourself and you're not taking the time to listen to what someone else has to say, or you're not listening to what they have to say, and you're just waiting for your opportunity to get your next word out, you might miss something really pivotal or important in the conversation that the person you're trying to connect with was intending to share with you. So it's really important that you get your pitch out, be brief with it, be descriptive with it, tell a little story, give some sort of value proposition about what you do, and then listen, and then listen, and then be adaptive to that conversation, and don't just make this about you. All right, so I want to give you an example of a pitch. So I just want to sort of use myself for an example. If I were to introduce myself to you today, I would say something along these lines. And hi, I'm Deevo, and I specialize in transforming brand strategies into vivid content that captivates and resonates with your target audience. And that might sound a little bit like overworked, so I did that on purpose. So I broke this down for you in the second level of it. In a nutshell, what I do, I help businesses stand out in a crowded marketplace by captivating, connecting, and converting so that they can connect with their ideal buyer. I'm a brand expert, and in a nutshell, I'm a storyteller, and I'm a digital storyteller. And then I stop and so tell me a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you do. And so you'll notice in that pitch, in that I just dropped to you, all of the four core elements that we just talked about: introduction, my unique value proposition, my call to action, and my experience were sort of dropped in there in a casual conversational way. And so we're gonna craft those. But before we craft those, I want to pull up a slide so that you have just some ideation around some things to consider when you're working on your pitch right now. All right, so this is just some things to consider. I think Setu said this in her notes. Start with the hook. Your hook is always your opening line. It's something that should grab the listener's attention. Focus on the benefits, not the features. People are really interested in what your product can do for them. That's a really important point. You don't want to talk about all the things that you're good at, all the things that you love doing. People really only care what's in it for them. Think about that from a perspective. Again, think about yourself as a consumer. If the roles were reversed and you were listening to them, it's a very good chance that you're going to want to hear, okay, what am I going to get out of this engagement with this person? What's in it for me? And it may sound selfish and narcissistic, but it's just the nature of humanity. So you really want to focus on the value that you bring to the table. That's that value proposition in every situation. What is this person that I'm going to engage with right now? How do they stand to gain by engaging with me? Always, again, use powerful emotional language. Don't be blah, don't be generic, don't be benign. Really spell out like you're in a drama scene what you do for your business and why they should take note of who you are. It's also another thing that I always implement into all of my interactions with people is I tell stories. You notice at the beginning of my introduction, I told the story of being in Florida last week and getting thrown up on. People love stories. That's literally at the cornerstone and the bedrock of humanity. People love stories. And the cool thing about stories is that it connects you and makes you more relatable, right? It doesn't make you a robot. It gives them something to latch onto, because there's a good bet that somebody else has something similar or some sort of aspect of your story that they can relate to. And if you can get people, this is the trick, you want to get people to be able to relate to what you're saying and vice versa. And stories are a fantastic way to do that. Instead of like going into this sales pitch on why you should do this and why you should work with me, just stop. Don't sell. This is never a time to sell. This is a time to connect with them. This is a time to collaborate with them, talk about the things that you do and the benefits of them, and then listen to them. And ultimately, what that's going to translate into is some sort of creative model where the two of you could potentially collaborate and create. Keep it simple. Stay away from all the fancy language. I saw the funniest meme yesterday on Instagram. It was single guys who work in the tech world when they're on their first date. And this guy introduced himself and he had all this illusory language and he was using all these big words and all these techno jargon. And the women were just like, what? What are you saying? And so keep that in mind when you're talking to people in general. The general rule of thumb in business world, especially if you're sending emails or if you're writing copy on your website or using social media, is you typically want to write at a 6th to 8th grade level. So not and that doesn't mean that you can't be a prolific writer, but there's a time and a place for that. When you're doing your pitches and you're working to trying to connect with somebody, you're not trying there to impress them. You're trying to engage with them. You're trying to connect with them. So it's really important that the language that you use is relatable, understandable, and you have to assume that they know nothing about your industry. They know nothing about your job. So you can't be using language that has all of this techno jargon that's very specific and niche based about your specific profession. Also, when you're working on these pitches, which we're going to do in a minute, Setu, how much time do I have for this? Is this going until 7? Is that right? Okay, cool. So I've got, okay, we should have enough time. You want to practice them a lot. And a couple rules of thumb for me is I usually have 3 or 4 different sales pitches. And if you're using email for your sales pitch, for example, there's a lot of background noise. You should write multiple. Were you going to say something, Setu?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you may need to go in the participants list. Anybody whose mic is not turned off, you could probably click on it just because you're host.
Okay, hold on. Let me look at that real quickly.
You can just mute them. I think Brian, if you go to Brian's name, you can just mute. I think that's with the one mic. I see that's not.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Brian. I don't mean to be the dictator of volume here, but it's really background. The noise is really background loud. All right. So continuing on. So what point did I leave off on? Oh, so practice makes perfect and multiple versions. I want to talk about that for a second. So I pre-write all of my emails in advance. So I have sort of a template library of anything that revolves around introducing myself to a new client. We do a lot of lead generations where we're going to be talking to people for the first time. And so we write all these emails out in advance. So it's a really good practice just to systematize, first of all, for efficiency's sake, but it's a really good practice to have multiple types of pitches that you can also take with you and transpose if you're going to be meeting with somebody in a physical or virtual capacity, right? So one of the things that we're going to talk about in a minute is creating different iterations of your pitch, so that whether you're meeting with maybe you're meeting with the banker and you need some money, or maybe you're meeting with Setu and you want to talk about a proposal to introduce yourself to Charlotte is Creative, or maybe you're working with a client that you're trying to land a deal with. It's really important that every pitch you use is customized for the individual you're going to connect with. And you're going to take all of that information. So if you're going to a networking session, for example, to meet a bunch of people, you sort of want to have this generic high level pitch that says all of the deliverables we just talked about: who you are, what you do, why you do it, and the emotional connectivity that gives them some sort of reason why they would want to continue having a conversation with you, right? And then the other piece that I always find is really important for a lot of people that I meet with, and we do one-on-one coaching when I'm with some of my entrepreneurial clients, and they rehearse their pitch so much that then they sound like a robot when they read it back. And they'll go into an event, or they'll go into a physical session, and they're like sort of, "Hi, my name is Deevo, and I am the Chief Experience Officer." You got to just chill on that. So you have to rehearse this enough that you can talk about this in your sleep. And you need to be able to use emotion when you talk about this. Imagine you going in for a theatrical performance and you're trying out for a play. It needs to have passion in it. It needs to have interest in it. It needs to have emotion in it, because the other person on the other side of that conversation is going to see it exactly for what it is. So, and the way to get around that is to rehearse them and know them. Practice them in the mirror. Practice them with a friend. Use your kids. I use my kids all the time for stuff. I'm like, I have a 17-year-old daughter. She's like, "Dad, not again." I'm like, "Get over here and sit down. We're going to talk about this." And so whenever I want to try things out, I'm like, "How does this sound to you?" So use your kids for it, use your partner. There's all sorts of different things. And then the last couple of things, since we already talked about call to action, I always use what's called the problem solution benefit framework. Okay. So this is really important to understand. And you could really develop this over time, but you want to describe a problem that your target audience faces, right? So do some research. So let me give you an example. I get a lot of people who hit me up on LinkedIn on a regular basis for something. They're always trying to sell me something, right? Because I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And so anyone who's really active pops up into the algorithm. And nobody, I can tell you out of 100 emails I receive on a weekly basis, about one or two of them actually took the time to go into my profile, see what I do, and take the time to customize their email to me. And think about your sales for a minute. How many sales emails do you get? You probably delete at least 90% of them. I know I do. But I read them. I quickly look, I scan over emails and I look for, is there something in that email where they took the time to get to know who I was and look at what my problem might be and then craft me an email from that perspective. And you can't always do this live, right? So if you go into a networking session and you're meeting people for the first time, you're obviously not going to be able to do that. But you can get a lot from someone by being observant, by sort of listening and watching and picking up on subtle clues, the way they're dressed, the way they talk, listen to their jargon. And if you're intuitive enough and paying attention enough and listening, you can make a lot of deductions. But back to the problem solution benefit framework. When you're crafting pitches to people or you're sending out emails to people, you always want to do some research and figure out who it is about the person that you're going to be writing to. If I was going to be sending an email to Tim about doing a session for them in front of their entire audience, I would do some research on Tim and figure out, okay, what does Tim's problems look like? Okay. So I see that he's struggling for this. I see that he might be looking for one of these people. I see that they potentially are not getting something of this nature. And I'm not making any assumptions, but I'm just sort of looking at what problem could I solve when I send Tim my email? And when I send that email, it's going to be catered directly to him. I'm going to take my pitch that I've already written in advance, and then I'm just going to cross out and delete a few words and plug in a few more. And so what happens when Tim gets that message, think about all the messages Tim gets. He's going to look for the one that really called out to something that was near and dear to his heart emotionally, right? And that's going to be the one that Tim's going to read. And most likely, if he's going to in the mood to respond to people, that's the message he's going to respond to. I promise you, it works. It's something that will make you stand out from anyone else because everyone basically does the same thing. They're just copying and pasting and sending everything out to everyone. All right. So I'm going to stop there for a second. I'll just see if does anybody have any specific questions that they want to ask. Am I talking too fast? Is the information kind of are we connecting on this? Everyone's good. Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to do what I think is the most important aspect of your elevator pitch, which is defining your unique value proposition. And so the fastest way, and there's a lot of ways you can do this, but the fastest way to do this is what I call the XYZ model, okay? And this can be applied in a bunch of different scenarios. So what I want you to do on your piece of paper and your pen right now, I want you to write down this statement down here at the bottom. We help X do Y by doing Z. Just write that down. Okay. We help X do Y by doing Z. All right. Now I want you to spend 60 seconds on filling in X, Y, and Z. Spend 60 seconds on filling in what X, Y, and Z is right now. Don't worry about the wordsmith. Don't worry about being perfect. Just worry about getting X, Y, and Z. We help entrepreneurs do marketing by amplifying their message or by telling their story, right? We help entrepreneurs with social media by managing it for them and helping them grow their business. Do you follow where I'm going with it? So, in every situation, you're adding some sort of a value. You're telling the listener what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. Okay. So, spend 60 seconds putting that together. Sadhu, how many people in our group total right now?
I think we have about 20, not including the two of us. So maybe 19, not including you, me, and Tim.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to put you all in a quick breakout room, one-on-one. You're going to have one-on-one with somebody else in this room. And then the two of you are to work together and help each other flesh that value proposition out. So if we were in one of my workshops, we'd be going around the room and I'd call you out and pick on you. You'd have to come up and work with me and we'd set that out. But I find that breakout rooms work really well as well. So you're going to have 2 minutes. We'll go 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to work on this with your partner. I'm going to put you in a breakout room right now and we'll see you in 3 minutes. Hey, just checking in, seeing how everybody is. Any questions? Everyone's good. Any questions?
Luis, Amy, you have questions?
Oh,
Do you want to share yours?
sure. We help men and women who care about their appearance accentuate their personal style by creating custom bracelets. I forgot the last part because I didn't write that one down, but by creating custom bracelets. I forgot what I said the first time.
All right.
It's a picture. I'm still working on it.
That's all right. Keep working on it. I'm just checking to see if you had any questions. You're on the right track with it, though. I can tell you right now, you're already sort of sorted out a lot further than some people do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so keep fleshing those out. You have a minute and a half. See if you can get that sorted, and I'll see you in a minute and a half.
Okay,
Cool.
thanks.
Good. Good morning. Just checking in to see if you need any help, if you're good.
Hey, I can't hear Ashley, but we've been typing and talking, so
Oh, all right. Well, way to
I
be
think we're good.
way to be flexible and adaptive on that. Nice work.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
Can you see the chat?
Days will be one. So
Oh, well,
yeah.
that's wonderful.
Hey, just
Yeah.
checking
Sounds
in to
like a
see.
lot of fun.
Just checking in to see if you guys are good. You need any help with anything?
I think we're good, Diva.
Well,
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, brilliant.
Yes.
All right, we'll
So
see you in a minute.
But yeah, I think both of ours really were effective.
Yes, I think so too. I think that I'd like to come up with some different versions of mine because I can work with individuals too, as well as businesses. I'm very like custom to what I can do. So I'd love to come up with that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. We're closing the room, so I was trying to make my way into everyone's room. I didn't get a chance to get into all of you, so we've got 19 more seconds left for everyone rejoins us.
Maybe I could ask a question in this space while we wait.
Sure, go ahead.
My question is, if you work with
Oh,
all
we're back.
different types of people, how to make that succinct? How to make the X succinct?
So all types of different all different types of people in terms of different professions, different industries. What is it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so I'm a writing and wellness coach who, I'll just kind of read some of what I put here. Who helps people, that's the part I get stuck on, how to find and communicate their unique voice using creative, healthy, and concrete tools for their personal and professional lives.
So I guess the fastest way to answer that, and I don't want to take too much time on it, is I might suggest, and we can have an offline conversation on this, I might suggest trying to niche down a little bit on who your target audience is and see if you can come up with a common denominator on who that is. So in my case, I work with entrepreneurs, but I work with specialized entrepreneurs. And in that specialized term, they're very specific types of people that I work with, coaches, holistic health practitioners, entrepreneurs, etc. So is there a way that you can further define your niche? And if you can further define your niche, you're going to be more inclined to be able to talk to them in all of your marketing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I've been trying to brainstorm it, but I work with a lot of different people, so I'll keep working on it, but thank you.
We can chat offline about it. I'm happy to help you with that. There's a couple of exercises we can do to sort that out.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So I'm just everybody can mute their phones again. That would be fantastic. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I appreciate it. I hope you got a chance to sort of put something together. It's not going to be perfect right now. I'm going to challenge you over the next couple of days to spend some time really refining this. And the young lady who just had a question, and thank you for your question. It's a really good question. She asked, if we work with a bunch of different types of people, how do we define what that X is? And I'm not saying I don't know your business, so I don't know what your model is, but I would suggest to see if there's a way, if anybody else falls into that categorical description where you're sort of, I work with a large swath of people. I would challenge you to try to hone in on that a little bit deeper on what all types of people are actually. And I would be willing to bet if you did some analysis on that, you would find some sort of common denominator that separates everyone into a smaller bucket of people. And then once you have that smaller bucket of people, you're going to be better able to refine what that word is, Courtney. Does that make sense? And there's ways that we can do that. So I'm sorry, I can't go into that right now, but there are ways to do that. So I want to go back to this value proposition and just sort of give you some food for thought as you're analyzing it with your homework in the last 10 minutes or so we have here. So in that value proposition, remember that it very distinctly and succinctly outlines what you offer, how you solve your audience's problem, and what sets you apart from the rest of the people doing the same thing. So again, the first thing is to identify your unique offer. What do you provide that no one else does? Okay. So for that, Courtney, to continue with you, in that large group of everybody, what is the solution that you're giving them that you're finding has the most impact for them? And you might be able to reverse engineer that and get some clarity on if you can identify what your unique offer is and what difference it makes for your everybody. You might see by reverse engineering that everybody is a smaller group of people that actually need that solution. Does that make sense? So if you're a writer, for example, because somebody had a really good example for copywriting and writing just general copy. So to use her example, everybody needs good copywriting. Like good writing has gone by the wayside. Literally in the last 50 years, writing has gone down the hill. It's a scientific fact. There's just the data supports it. So I would ask her to really encourage her to look at if she's offering writing for people, is she looking to add writing value for big corporations? Are you looking for solopreneurs? Are you looking for entrepreneurs? What is the type of person you're looking for? And here's why you want to be really crystal clear on who that target audience is. Because if you're crystal clear on who your target audience is, so is your target audience going to be, because they're going to hear that message that's intended for them. Does that make sense? You're not speaking to everybody. You're never speaking to everybody. You're speaking to a very specific type of person, Courtney, that needs your solution. And no matter how big you think that group it is, I promise you there are a few qualifiably unique common denominators that makes that group a little bit smaller. And if you can figure out what that group is and what those denominators are, you're going to be able to change the copy on your website, your social media, the images that you put out, the story that you tell. And there, remember that whole piece in the beginning of the elevator pitch? What's the emotional connection you can make with your audience, right? If you can further hone in on that and refine that, you're going to be able to speak to it on a more emotional level to that type of person, right? So think about that for a second. If you were to take a look at like your 5 closest friends or your 5 closest people in your world, and I'm getting off target, but I'm going somewhere with this. If you were to take a look at the 5 closest people you have in your circle, that might be your mom, that might be your partner, that might be your kid, that might be your best friend. I don't know who it is. Just think about the people who are you're closest with. In every situation, first of all of them are uniquely different, right? Every single one of those people is distinctively different. They have their own history, their own context, their own personality, everything, right? But there's a couple of qualities, there's a couple of values that you share that made them part of your circle, right? Maybe it's they're trustworthy. Maybe it's that they always do what they say they're going to do. Maybe it's that they're funny. Maybe it's they're very reliable. I don't know what those values are, but you want to start thinking about when you're creating this elevator pitch, you want to start thinking about what are the values that I hold near and dear to me. And when you craft your pitch, when you craft your copy, when you craft your language, you're going to use those value metrics to define who you are, what you do, and why you are. And you're going to be able to speak to that person because those people share the same values as you do. And those are the people that you want to connect with. To use Charlotte is Creative as an example. They're speaking to a very, very specific audience of potentially entrepreneurs, potentially business owners. Maybe there's people who work in the corporate world, but every single one of them at the core is looking for some sort of social value to connect with people on a creative level, to have some sort of collaboration in some capacity, even if it's just having some social capacity to engage with people. And so they're very, very clear on the type of people. And if you look around the room that show up at a lot of their events, you'll see a very similar ethos of the people that are there. And so it's really, and they've done a really good job of attracting that audience. So you just want to think about that when you're crafting this pitch. Who am I? And what does my client want? Who am I? What's my value? And what problem am I solving for my client? Don't think about it from your perspective on what's in it for me. Think about it, what's in it for them. And if you can be really clear about that, you're going to be able to really hone in on that. And so just a couple of things, and I'm just going to read these really quickly because I don't have too much time. When you're crafting this, we help X do Y by doing Z. There's a set of like principles that you really want to go by. And I think I can put these in the Zoom. Can I copy them? I never copied this many points in the Zoom chat. Let me see what happens. Forgive me if this comes across as a cluster. Yeah, that worked. Okay, cool. So those are all specific questions. If everyone can just copy and paste those so you have them. But you want to talk about what problem does your product or service solve? Can you describe a scenario in which your product or service is the perfect solution? What makes your offering different? How does your product service improve the customer's life? These are all things that are going to really help you kind of hone in on that value proposition. Okay? Everyone good so far? Any questions? All right, cool. All right, so
Actually, I've got a question. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No worries.
Can you just quickly go over the proposition, the value proposition, the three elements of that?
The 3 elements of the value proposition. Is that what you said? You broke up. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So the one that says we help X do Y by doing Z. So
well, what you offer. The first is what you offer.
Yeah. Identify your unique offer. Solve a problem. Highlight or call out your differentiator. What makes you uniquely qualified to give them that solution? Why would I want to do business with you, Brian? What is it about you? What do you offer the world that is going to make you qualifiably unique to take my time, my energy, and potentially my money to do business with you. And so you always have to think about that in every situation, whether it's your website copy, whether it's your elevator pitch, whether it's your social media, you always want to give someone a reason for the problem that you solve. And if you can identify the problem that you solve, Courtney, to answer your question again, if you can very, very clearly identify the problem that you solve, you're going to be able to speak to that problem and emotionally connect that problem to the people who need your solution. And that's the key to everything. If you can identify what that is, and you understand what you bring to the table, you're going to be able to connect with an audience that's specifically looking for your solution. Does that make sense? Because again, when anyone tells me they're selling to a large group of people, that just tells me that they're really zealous to work with a lot of people. They're really excited. They can work with a lot of people. But in the end, if you really take a look at what you're presenting to them, you're going to find that you have a very, very specific solution that a very, very specific group of people are looking for. And that's really all there is to it. And if you can find out what that is, you're going to be better prepared to sell to that person ultimately, because that is sort of the commerce that goes around. So just to sort of recap some of the things that we talked about. Sorry, there's a lot of information. This is normally a 2 to 3 hour workshop. So I'm trying to condense everything and I'm talking really fast, so I apologize. But practice these, write down several iterations, rehearse them out loud, write multiple versions of this so that you can use it via, if you have to use a digital version of it, whether it's email, whatever it is that you're doing, you're giving a pitch to sell something. Work on your timing. You don't ever want to be overly verbose in this. Nobody has time in today's world to read more than they're already getting. And think about that for a minute, because that's a whole different workshop. Brevity, it's a workshop I'm working on right now. It's called Brevity. How do we change our communication standards so that we can connect with people in a quicker path of least resistance fashion? Because think about us. We have social media, we have emails, we have websites, we have television. We're literally bombarded all day long with information, and it's always coming at us no matter where we are. And some of it we do it to ourselves, but we're always surrounded by this bubble of information. So it's really important that you can get your pitch powerful, succinct, compelling, problem solving, differentiating, so that when you do have the opportunity to speak to people, it stands out from everyone else. It's really important that you find that unique qualifier. And so the best way to do that is to write down multiples, find what your problem is that you solve, keep rehearsing them till you get it down so it's second nature to you, work on your timing. General rule of thumb is you want this to be around that 30 to 45 seconds, but generally it takes about 60 seconds for that engagement. But you want to, for timing purposes, keep it in that 30 to 45 second range. And then practice with people. Go to other people, your friends, your family, everyone, and just give it to them and see what they say. Give them the qualifiers that I talked about earlier. Does it solve a problem? Does it differentiate you? Does it give you some sort of qualifiable reason to emotionally connect with me? And ask them if your pitch hits those qualities when you give it to them. I'm also going to I'll share this slide with you just so you can all read it real quickly, because this is another piece that's just sort of like gives you some insights on really honing in on this. Let me pull this up real quickly. So this is the delivery, sort of the pieces that really make sense when you're working with someone in a physical capacity. It's really important that your tone of voice is emotional. Don't look down, look them straight in the eye, make eye contact, smile. Don't be aloof, be purposeful. Body language is everything. Think about when you interact with somebody, what is the body language, the subtleties that you pick up on? Were they arrogant? Were they slovenly? Were they empathetic? Were they apathetic? Think about that. And if you start to watch people, you'll see all these different elements that we put off most of the time unconsciously. So think about yourself in the same capacity. What's your body language say? How are you dressed? How's your eye contact? What's your energy and your enthusiasm? Are you really robust? Are you really excited? Don't be too excited. Are you authentic? Are you genuine? Do you come across as a fraud, as fake? Like, in all of these things, you can improve upon with practice and sharing and reiterating and moving through all the different spaces that we just talked about. And so it's really important that you take some of these pieces and spend some time on them so that you really have an opportunity to perfect this. I think I ran out of time, Setu. I'm really sorry that I went a little bit over. So I don't know if there's anything else that anyone I think I'm supposed to open this up for Q&A. Is that correct? Who has questions?
Yeah, but this has been so good. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants to stay, maybe we just give another 5 minutes. Is that okay, Deevo?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm putting my, if you take a picture of this, you'll be able to connect with me directly. I will respond to everyone's messages. Like it's just what I do. It's in the nature of my business to help people out, and I'm happy to answer. You can text me, you can send me an email. But if you take a screenshot of that, it should take you straight to all my contact information, and happy to connect with you offline as well.
Awesome. Did we could maybe spend another 3 minutes on questions if anyone wants to come off mic. Or you can drop it in the chat. See what we have.
I have a question. Deevo, this was great, first of all.
I'm glad you
I
enjoyed
do
it.
have a
Thank you.
question about how to incorporate a story into your pitch.
Are we talking about a physical or an email or both, or just sort of all of the above?
Or should you in a one-on-one? I can see how to do it in an email,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's like a one-on-one situation, should you try to incorporate?
If you can, yes. It might not happen in the first 30 seconds though. But if you can share a story, you need to learn, Wendy, to read the room and sort of understand, right? And you'll very quickly understand like whether this person is interested. You can see it right away. But if you can hook them in, and then that story and then that connection starts to evolve, it's really good to drop a story in, especially if you listen to them and they drop a cue to you, right? Maybe they'll say something in their response to you. Oh, that come to think of it, that's so funny that happened to me last week. I was here, and tell them a little story about it. And again, make it more relatable. But it might not happen in the first 30 to 45 seconds. You're just gonna have to read the room.
Okay, so that makes sense. So that might be a follow-up to, the XYZ type pitch, but yeah, I get that. That's very
Totally.
helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah, I did have a question, and thanks again, Devo. Really informational. So this kind of isn't necessarily a pitch to like pitch a business per se, but so I've sat on a few interviews recently, and the infamous question, tell us a little bit about yourself. I feel like I found myself kind of oversharing. You kind of just start talking and talking and talking. What are some of the key components you would recommend that should be a part of that question, whether it's academic credentials or professional experience? How deep do you recommend a person should go when having that conversation?
That's a great question, and I don't know that there is an exact scientific answer to it, and I don't mean to be ambiguous about it, but I think it sort of goes back to the context of the room that you're in and who you're with, and the type of relationship, whether it's a job interview, and sort of the comfort level that you have. But a general rule of thumb for me is to be matter of fact, to the point, and I use what's called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Very engaging, to the point. Don't overwhelm them. Don't make this about yourself, but show enough interest and enough conversational aptitude that they know, A, you're listening to what they say, and B, give yourself a few pats on the back. Like, let them know you can do that really quickly in a matter of fashion. What do you do, Rashad? Tell me just real quickly what you do.
I'm a creative, very similar to what you do as well. So I launched my creative agency a couple of years ago, specializing in branding design, some photography, videography, and just helping organizations and companies just identify their voice in the market.
Got it. You want to role play for a second?
Sure.
All right, you be the person who was interviewing you. Let's see if we can't come up with something together.
So I'm the interviewer.
Yeah, and I'm you.
Okay. So Rashad/Devo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Before I get into that, what am I interviewing for? Is this a job for that I might be working as you as my client? Is that how that works?
Creative director role for a corporation.
Oh, tell me a little bit about myself. So I'm an ex-corporate executive. I spent 15 years rubbing shoulders with some of the most intelligent people in America in the banking system. And I had the opportunity to learn from a lot of people, but I found that I just wasn't really compelled to stay in that space because I just sort of felt like it wasn't my ultimate calling. And so I left that world with a masterful amount of experience so that I could start my own business and take all the lessons I learned and do it myself.
Thank you.
That's literally it.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And then I would turn that back around to a question about them. So tell me a little bit about you. How long you've been in this position? Like, always ask a question after you drop a statement, because you always want to flip it back to what's in it for them, right? Especially if you're trying to sell yourself to them. Let them talk. Play off their. This is going to sound horrible, but play off their ego. Let them have the mic. Let them have the reins. Let them sort of drive it. And then when it's your opportunity, keep it simple, stupid. Interject with some compulsion, emotional piece. Let them know that you do have value, but then stop and then ask them another question.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let's connect offline.
Will do.
All right. Anybody else?
Cool.
Nobody has any questions? The
I have
only bad question is the one you didn't ask.
I have a really quick question.
Hey, Janelle. Wait, I think you muted. Where'd you go?
Can you guys hear me?
And now we can, yeah.
Okay, so mine is a little bit different. I'll come off camera. Mine is a little bit different because my business are in two separate industries.
Mm-hmm.
So I find myself very stressed out trying to create one value proposition, even though they work together because I've made it so, but people don't have time to figure that out. So I end up feeling like I have to create two, but then that basically ruins the fact that they can be brought together. Do you have any advice for people that are not just a writer, just working in marketing, just, that kind of thing?
So the two businesses can operate in a silo, but they can also integrate?
Absolutely.
And do they have separate websites and separate audiences altogether?
No, they did. I just brought them together to show that they can be, because the industries are life coaching and speaking and leather accessories.
Oh,
So
okay.
you see what I mean? So the name of the business is Patchwork Queen. And the idea behind it is that your life is patchwork. So there's no straight road to anything. So those are the two things that I do very well. And I got very tired of being the one person trying to figure out to separate the two. So that's my situation.
So just out of curiosity, how does Leatherworks incorporate into public speaking? Just so I understand in your world, explain to me the integration.
So then that's not the right answer. They work together because of me, but they are two separate industries. Yes.
So why are you combining them?
Well, because my client is the person that wears my accessories and also the one that I speak to. So my life coach clients are women business owners, and they are 6-figure owners, and those are the ones that are purchasing my leather accessories. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but they're also purchasing your coaching.
Yes.
So
not the same person, the same client.
Explain to me that the same client. What do you mean by that?
The same demographic, like the same abilities to be able to pay for it, that is interested in being different, having one of a kind luxuries. I only make one item and it's all luxury leather.
I would separate them. I don't think they belong in the same bucket. It might be a little more work for you, but I don't know that coaching, and you might get different answers, so don't take my word for it. Speak to other experts, but let me just give you some food for thought.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you, and I was trying to sell to you for the first time, and I'm a marketing and branding guru, but I also sell chocolates, and I really want you to buy both of them, which one of you you're going to have buyer confusion. You're not going to really know. What I would rather see you do is, once you've built that relationship with them, once you have that business lined up, once you're working with them in whatever capacity is your greater good, I would integrate that as something else, as a gift, for example, and just put it into conversation. I wouldn't necessarily combine the two. I think that you're going to give your audience buyer confusion, and more importantly, you're giving yourself confusion because you don't know how to manage those two right now. That's my answer. I would not combine them.
Okay.
Find a way. The only way you can combine them is if you can find an integrative capacity. What is the binding glue that brings those two together? Can you answer that? Other than the fact that it's for a high-end entrepreneur that would like to wear this good or would like to use this accessory. And for me, I don't think those go into the same bucket. You could use them in an integrative capacity after the fact, but I would not sell them in the same silo. I would pop them out.
I think it's just the fact that then that means I would have to choose one would have to be ancillary, and that is where the confusion comes in, because I go into the industries to do one thing. I do both things. I am a creative, and then I also am a life coach. So I can't pick one. So I guess I would have to just push them both, but then push them separately.
I have two companies. they operate in independent silos. There's an integrative capacity. For example, we shoot photography, and so a lot of the times the companies that hire me for branding and marketing, they obviously need content, so I integrate it that way. That's the common glue. But I just in order of time's sake, let's take this offline. Send me a text. Let's have a conversation. I'm happy to have a conversation with you. Let me further flesh it out with you and hear what you have to say. But just off the cuff, binarily speaking, I'm saying they don't sound like there's a connection for me, and I wouldn't market them together personally. But I do think that there are ways. Let me give you a qualifier for that. I do think there are ways that you can whittle them into the conversation. I just don't think they could be marketed together. And it just from what I know. Sorry. But call me. Let's talk. I'm happy to have this conversation with you. Really, truly mean that.
Okay,
Deevo,
thank you.
thank you so much for being so available. I know this could probably go for quite some time, but Sethu has been at it since early, and she's got small children, so
no problem.
She would go for 3 more hours. But on her behalf, I'm going to say, Deevo, thanks. Maybe we need to. It seems like we need to try to do this again, or maybe do it in a different format. But the availability that you've given everybody tonight is amazing. And so in the follow-up, we'll tell people how to connect with you. And I just appreciate your time, your insight, your passion, and really your care for the creative community. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my honor. I hope I didn't go too fast for everybody. Thank you, Tim, for letting me be here and inviting me, Sethu, as well. And again, that's an earnest response. If anybody does want to take this offline, I'm happy to get. The best way to find me is text message. I don't answer my phone, and I take a long time for email. But text, I'm a texting guru.
All right, we'll include that in the follow up. But you guys have been awesome. Deevo, we'll see you soon, and everybody, we'll see you at the next Creative Convo.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thanks, Deevo.
Thanks, Deevo. You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Night, everyone.
Bye.